Donald Trump is doing everything he can to try to distract from the Jeffrey Epstein emails. It ain't working, but he's desperate, so he'll grab onto anything. Right now, he's very angry with Seth Meyers. Seth Meyers has the late night show, and he's always talking shit about Donald Trump, justifiably so. And for whatever reason, that's made Donald Trump mad. Donald Trump is telling NBC Universal that they should fire Seth Meyers. Now, I'm wondering, that may be the best thing in the world for Seth Meyers. Yet why don't you go ahead, NBC Universal, and fire Seth Meyers? Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to run into a boycott. You're going to lose billions of dollars, just like Disney did. You're going to have to bring back Seth Meyers, and then his ratings will be huge. That's a brilliant idea. Fire Seth Meyers. Give Donald Trump what he's asking for. Bend a knee one more time for Donald Trump and see what fucking happens. By the way, if they fire Seth Meyers or NBC fires Seth Meyers, don't really care. Still want to see the Epstein files. Still want to have questions answered for the emails we already have. Tell us about fucking Bubba. Inquiring minds want to know, Donnie. What's up with fucking Bubba?
We have some news right now. Donald Trump is furious right now at who? Indiana Republicans. Why? Because they wouldn't listen to him. They wouldn't redistrict their state to try to help Republicans in the House of Representatives pick up an additional seat in the House of Representatives. And Donald Trump is now calling on anyone who voted no or refused to redistrict to be primaried. It's a big story that Indiana Republicans rebuke Donald Trump, but I think the bigger story here is that more Republicans are rebuking Donald Trump. We're just comfortable not following his orders. And it's emblematic of a lame duck president. I've been saying that for a long time. He is a lame duck president. He cannot run for a third term no matter how much he wants to. And so he's lashing out because Republicans aren't listening to him. And so what does he do? He sits back, he types on his Truth Social account, and that's it. Nothing else happens. Because at the end of the day, that's all in any event. So we'll see what happens next. Ultimately, it's bad news for Trump all around this week. Spread the word, follow along, stay up to date on all the news you need to know about. Subscribe to my Substack, link in bio to support my work.
Marjorie Taylor Greene went on CNN this morning and grilled Donald Trump, but she also asked a very important question that millions of other Americans are wondering, and that is, did Epstein work for Israel? She pointed out his very close relationship to Ehud Barak, who was the former prime minister. Take a look.
We saw Jeffrey Epstein with ties to Ehud Barak. We saw him making business deals with them, also business deals that involved the Israeli government, and seems to have led into their intel agencies. And I think the right question is to ask is, was Jeffrey Epstein working for Israel?
The public deserves to know if any foreign actor, including people connected to intelligence agencies, had influence over Epstein. That's a perfectly legitimate question to have if you take a look at the facts without any bias, so here they are. Yoni Koren is a former Israeli military intelligence officer who had very close ties to Ehud Barak. He was his aide and worked alongside him. And he stayed at Epstein's apartment in the United States at least 3 times over the span of several years, while still being connected to the intelligence community. Several emails show Ehud Barak exchanging encrypted communications with Yoni Koren. For example, in this one, they talk about dropping off a pair of earphones, and Koren says, "No problem, what's her name?" Then Barak replies with a female's name. This is not a speculation or rumor either. These are archived records. We all need to be asking ourselves why a foreign intelligence officer spent extended amounts of time living with Epstein. His network intersected with many very powerful people, from corporate to political to even intelligence linked. We deserve full transparency, and Donald Trump is fighting to ensure that doesn't happen.
So Dumpy has been saying for the longest time that our inflation is going down. It's practically nothing. In fact, our economy is booming. It's the greatest it's ever been. Then why did he recently have to lower the tariffs? He lowered tariffs on beef, bananas, coffee. Maybe, just maybe, it's because inflation is going up. And there's only so long he can pretend that it's not costing us tons of money. Because when his lawyers went up in front of the Supreme Court during oral arguments about his tariffs, John Roberts said, "Who's paying the tariffs?" And Trump's lawyer said, "Oh, the American people are." And which John Roberts had to reiterate that it is a tax on American citizens. And now Trump is taking time to rant on Turd Social about how he says inflation is down and prices are down, when prices are going up, inflation is going up, and his original plan that he said for these tariffs was to bring down the national debt. And since he said that 2.5 months ago, our debt has increased by $1 trillion. This, coupled with his newest idea for trying to destroy Obamacare by creating what he calls Trump Care, which just apparently creates small subsidies to give to people to spend on private insurance anyway, which would be more expensive. I'm wondering when MAGA is finally going to realize that everything their Lord and Savior touches turns to shit. Every single business venture, all of his casinos, his first presidency, his second presidency, and pretty soon the grift that is Trump care is going to be thrown into the same trash bin as Trump steaks.
This is a shitty economy. The Trump economy is a really shitty economy. Let's be clear about it. Trump continues to say that the economy is fabulous.
We have the greatest economy we've ever had.
You know, he in capital letters shouting, you know, grocery prices are down. Well, the trouble is you can't tell people what they see every day, and you can't tell them that they are blind, that they are wrong. I mean, they see that grocery prices are going up. They see they're spending more and more for things that they were, just 6 months ago or 9 months ago were not nearly as expensive. And so even without the data, the official government data, and even with Trump shouting, "You're wrong, everything is great, everything's affordable," people understand that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's out of touch at the very least. You know, I've looked at all of the private, there are private data sources. They're not nearly as good as the Bureau of Labor Statistics or the Commerce Department's Bureau of Economics, but they are good. And those private sources say job growth is almost zero. I mean, jobs are not being created in this economy. In fact, jobs are being lost in this economy. Number two, inflation is really picking up. I mean, we see inflation about, prices are about 27 or 30% higher than they were, at the start of the pandemic, just to take one baseline. And thirdly, we see that wages are not keeping up with prices, which means that most people are getting poorer. And finally, number four, what the data show is that inequality is widening because you've got people at the top, the top 10%, the richest 10% of Americans are doing pretty well because they are the ones that own shares of stock. They own 92% of the stock market, the richest 10%. They're doing well because the stock market is doing so well. But everybody else, the bottom 90% of Americans are really not doing well. They don't have shares of stock. Their wages are lagging behind. They're nervous. This is even before the shutdown. And the shutdown, of course, made a lot of them even more desperate. And this is probably the biggest. I mean, put Jeffrey Epstein, everything else is important, but this is what's going to bring Trump down in the midterms.
Say goodbye to your former supporters, Donald. Donald Trump's former MAGA supporters are making videos of themselves and posting it across social media where they're burning their MAGA hats, their MAGA shirts, and their MAGA signs, and they are saying how betrayed they feel by Donald Trump's actions, putting America last, covering up for a child sex trafficking ring, and by lying and saying that things are far more affordable right now and that everybody's living in a golden age while Donald Trump grifts for himself and makes billions of dollars while he makes the American people suffer. We're not just seeing one or two videos. We are seeing right now a mass movement of former MAGA supporters taking to social media and telling Donald Trump they're done, that they are leaving MAGA. Here's another portion of that video, and you'll see just how angry Donald Trump's former supporters are at his betrayal, at his con job, at his rug pull, and as they burn their MAGA hats and shirts, they start cursing at him, and we're seeing this across social media right now. Play this clip.
Son from 2016.
Fuck you!
Sure as fuck are making America proud right now. And for the record, we stand with MTG and Massey.
We're also seeing former MAGA supporters replace their MAGA hats with America First hats and showing solidarity with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey. As we know, Donald Trump is saying that Marjorie Taylor Greene is a traitor to the MAGA movement because she's called for the release of the Epstein files. She said that these files should not be covered up, and she says that Donald Trump is not telling the truth when he says things are more affordable right now for Donald Trump. He said that that was far too much for him to handle, that she would say those things. By the way, what she's saying there is true. And so Donald Trump has banished Marjorie Taylor Greene from the MAGA movement. And she's posted that as a result of Donald Trump's attacks on her, that she's received death threats, that her life has been put in jeopardy by Donald Trump's conduct, how security firms are reaching out to her to offer protection. Marjorie Taylor Greene's daughter sent a heartfelt public message to her mom saying that she stands with her mom in the face of these death threats and all the horrible things happening now as a result of Donald Trump's conduct. And while all of that is taking place, where's Donald? He's showing that betrayal and rubbing it in the face of his former supporters. He was in Mar-a-Lago yesterday and today on the taxpayer dime once again, golfing, and he spent his time golfing with Lindsey Graham, whom most people who were formerly MAGA, who no longer.
In the last week, I have been making videos about Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I think my second to last video, I was saying the reason why I don't quite trust her. And one of the reasons is because she didn't denounce Trump, right? She blamed Mike Johnson and the Republican men. And then the second reason was because she didn't take ownership for her actions. And I gave you an example like Sandy Hook, David Hogg, the way she treats AOC and Jasmine Crockett. But now that she actually sees Trump attacking her in real time in his social media platform, well, it seems like she's changing her tune, isn't she? And now, she's not playing this game anymore. And I believe she is deconstructing the Republican Party in real time. Now, today she was on a morning show and she talked about Trump's attack that is labeling her as a traitor. And she said out of her mouth, and I find this rich, that those are the types of words used that can radicalize people against me and put my life in danger. Yeah, no kidding. This is the reason why the Democratic Party vilified you, because your words speak volumes. There's power behind words, hate or love. She continues on to say that it all comes down to the Epstein files, and I know that's shocking, and I stand with these women. I stand with rape victims, the survivors of trafficking. I believe the country deserves transparencies in this file. And she's calling the Republicans, Trump, whatever, this toxic infighting. And I am so happy to report that Dana Bash challenged her on her track record of past violent rhetoric towards Democrat, including Nancy Pelosi and Obama, and post an image of herself. I remember this when she had the weapon along the pictures of the squad, which include AOC. She apologized, guys. You believe it? She said, "I am so sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. Put down the knives, be kind to one another. I never wanted to cause any harm." So I really thought that she was on the road to redemption. But they asked her one last question, if she can reconcile with Trump. And she said, "Well, I certainly hope that we can make up. I can only speak for myself. I'm a Christian, and one of the most important part of our faith is forgiveness. And that's something I'm committed to." She has a ways to go, but I think she's getting a little bit closer. Now, since she is taking some ownership to her words, I want to see those apologies to these people, like David Hogg, like the parents of the victims of Sandy Hook, like to AOC and Jasmine Crockett. You were awful. But now I have to ask you guys again, because I keep asking this question. What do you think? Do you think that there's real change in the air, or do you think this is still another ploy for her to run for office, maybe even president of the United States?
So I've been making a lot of videos about how Donald Trump is weaker than he appears. And as we saw in the 2025 elections, that premise has been more than validated. Republicans across the country saw massive losses as they were weighed down by Donald Trump's political toxicity and weakness. And since then, this fight to release the Epstein files that has been further accelerated by this release of emails that show damning new revelations about Donald Trump are further compounding the fractures within the MAGA coalition. We could see up to 100 Republicans next week in the House vote to release those files. That's a damning break from Donald Trump, who's desperately trying to conceal that content. And on top of that, we see debates within MAGA on Nick Fuentes and H-1B visas. A lot of things have risen to the surface this week to showcase that Donald Trump is not only weaker than he appears, he's actually starting to appear really weak. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm an independent journalist that's been covering Donald Trump and American politics for over a decade now. I've made appearances on MSNBC, CNN. I documented every single day of Trump's first term, and I write a best-selling Substack newsletter in which I've covered Project 2025 since 2023. And I've been really on this train that Donald Trump's political weakness is something that's looming over the Republican Party and defining them right now. And that's really been validated, as I outlined earlier. This is a situation in which Donald Trump is in his lame duck era, a president who is not running for re-election despite his calls and claims that he will in 2028. That's all trying to project false strength. What we're seeing is a weakened Donald Trump, a Donald Trump that cannot hold his coalition together. And that is what we are dissecting in this video. Stick around, you're going to learn a lot. One of the major ways Donald Trump has failed to keep the MAGA coalition together is on the release of the Epstein files. Donald Trump desperately did not want that discharge petition to pass in the House. He held a Situation Room meeting with members of the DOJ and tried to get Lauren Boebert to not sign on to this discharge petition. But in the end, Thomas Massie, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, they signed on to that discharge petition. It hit 218 votes, and now a House floor vote will be forced on the Epstein files. As Politico reported, we could see up to 100 Republicans defect and vote to release the Epstein files in the House vote next week. That would then, of course, go to the Senate, and if that gets over 67 votes, for example, there, and has a veto-proof majority in the House, then it's passed and Trump can't veto it. But if it doesn't reach that threshold, Donald Trump will be forced to veto the release of the Epstein files, which would be incredibly damning. This is an issue of Donald Trump's own making. For years, MAGA on the right were talking about how the release of the Epstein files would take down a hidden cabal of Democrats, right? But in the end, it looks like Donald Trump is the one who's trying to conceal these files, and that Donald Trump's name is all over it. As we can see with these damning emails, I covered those in other videos. I did a long video with Don Lemon on it too, you can go check out. So we have the Epstein files fracturing the MAGA coalition. We also have this other aspect, right? We have Nick Fuentes, who went on Tucker Carlson's podcast, who talked about organized Jewry and just really disgusting, bigoted, far-right white supremacist stuff that Nick Fuentes embodies. And we had Kevin Roberts at the Heritage Foundation, of course, Project 2025 fame, out here defending that appearance. And then now we saw real debates and fractures within the party. We saw Ben Shapiro, who really condemned this, rightfully so. He deserves a little bit of credit for that, condemning Nick Fuentes and everything he represents. So on this front, there's a debate going on about the extremism within the Republican Party and how much bigotry and far-right ideology they're going to allow to be embraced in the mainstream. That's a significant debate that's ongoing over here on the side. That's also worth noting. There are real fractures that are happening that are going to define the post-Trump GOP. Another fracture we're seeing is this debate over H-1B visas, right? We saw this in December of last year with Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, who were talking about the need for foreign workers to come in and work for tech companies, right? And then we see Trump in an interview with Laura Ingraham defend this. And Laura Ingraham said, oh, well, don't we have talented people here? He said, no, we don't have talented people here. You need to bring in some foreign workers, right? That really outraged a lot of MAGA. And there's a lot of reporting on this. You can go check it out. There's an article on NBC News that was really good about this. But that is a huge debate within MAGA. They're saying this is not America first. They're having really existential debates about Trump and whether or not he still represents the base. And that's huge. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. That's a huge debate that's ongoing within the party that's fracturing it ahead of a key election year in 2026. So you have the Epstein scandal dividing the MAGA base. You have this Nick Fuentes debate and the extremism conversation dividing the MAGA base. You have the H-1B visa debate dividing the base ahead of a key election year here in 2026. This is not where you'd want to be. And compounding all of this is the fact that Donald Trump is a lame duck, right? So Kennedy was asked this. Senator Kennedy was asked by Casey Hunt on CNN if Donald Trump's a lame duck, and he said yes, right? Because he is. He's not running for re-election. All that stuff is browbeating. He's beating his chest. He's trying to showcase strength because he doesn't want to be called the lame duck that he is. This is a president that has his approval ratings below 40% consistently in multiple polls. He is incredibly weak. He's underwater on key issues he was previously strong on: immigration, the economy, inflation, all of this stuff that I've been talking about in all these videos. It's all been confirmed. Donald Trump is a weak president that is weighing his party down. And those are just the fractures that I've talked about. There's so many other losses, like, for example, the gerrymandering campaign is starting to fizzle out. We saw Utah court actually greenlit another Democratic seat. We see Kansas, they dropped their bid. We saw resistance, like I outlined in another video, from Indiana and New Hampshire and other states, right, that are pushing back on Trump's gerrymandering campaign. So the efforts to essentially reinforce himself ahead of 2026 are also failing. So again, Donald Trump wants to appear as this massively strong authoritarian that's just kind of subjecting his will on people. But again, everywhere you look, you see political weakness. So the question is, which Republicans are going to wake up to the fact that Donald Trump is a lame duck president that is weighing them down? As I've mentioned, the second I saw Marjorie Taylor Greene start speaking out, I said there's one who is seeing the polling, who's recognizing the reality of where this is headed, right? So Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's not a moral calculation. She's making a political calculation about where the country is headed and how weak Donald Trump is. Will other Republicans follow suit? Will we start to see more defections? I mean, this Epstein vote is a massive defection from the president because no one wants to put their name on defending Epstein and his ilk. So will there be more defections? Will more Republicans defy Donald Trump moving forward? What is this going to mean politically for Donald Trump's agenda ahead of 2026, right? Donald Trump's over here trying to talk about affordability all of a sudden. But again, he still won't admit that the economy isn't where it should be because he's incapable of admitting wrongdoing or fault, because that would mean that his agenda is not working, which it isn't. So we'll see where this heads. But as I've been saying this whole time, I think Republicans are cooked in 2026. And all of this evidence is showing that that's not going to change. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I doubt they'll change their behavior. I'm assuming they're going to continue to overreach. But again, all this stuff, I mean, I was getting accused of like hopium and not really, and being overly optimistic when I was making some of these videos during the height of, our fear over Donald Trump's authoritarianism a few months back. But as we can see, look at these election wins. Look at what's happening. Look at the losses Donald Trump's experiencing. Look at the defections. This is a weak president. The reality is he is a weak president that is using authoritarianism and his actions to mask his weakness. He's still a threat, of course, but nonetheless, let's keep our eye on the ball and recognize the truth. This guy's on his way out of office in a few years, and right now he's weighing his party down. So that will impact behavior. We just have to see how. So if you like this video, feel free to subscribe at my newsletter, Ahmed Baba News. It's a best-selling newsletter on Substack. Consider becoming a paid subscriber. That's what really supports this work. And also follow me here. If you like these videos, I'm going to keep doing these because right now the momentum is on the side of the good guys. It's on the side of pro-democracy forces. So we have to keep up the pressure. So thanks for watching and appreciate all of you for what you do.